What is going on, guys? Greggles TV. This is all pulled from the website called Gadgets Deck. I covered this last time he did this for the Note phone. This time it's the evolution of the Samsung Galaxy S series. It's really cool to see how far everything has come. So let's jump into it. Starting off with the first Galaxy phone, the Galaxy S, you're going to see it came with a VGA camera, which is very low resolution, 5 megapixel rear camera. It had 3G on the first generation, an Exynos 3 processor, Android 2.1, 512 megabits of RAM, so like that's nothing. 32 gigabyte external SD card support, a 1500 milliamp battery. Came in storage sizes of 8 and 16, and the screen was only 4 inches. It was a Super AMOLED display. So, you know, even back then, this would still be a fairly okay, not okay phone, but it'd be a very low budget phone, even today's standards. And this is from almost 10 years ago at this point. Next, you had the Galaxy S2, and that brought 1080p video recording, a 2 megapixel front camera, 8 megapixel rear camera, a dual core processor, 1 gigabyte of RAM, so the RAM doubled, active noise canceling microphone, 4.3 inch Super AMOLED display, so a little bit bigger, and storage sizes doubled as well, 16 and now 32 gigabytes on there. For the S3, it brought a 720p front video recorder with multi-window support, so now you could run multi-windows, and multi-windows went as far back as May 2012, very impressive. Bluetooth 4.0, and that's something iPhone can't even do right now still. Bluetooth 4.0, Android 4.0, micro SIM, Gorilla Glass 2, storage sizes of 16, 32, and 64, and a 4.8 inch Super AMOLED display. If you got the S4, which I don't think I had this one, but you got a 2 megapixel front camera, 1080p front video camera, awesome. Dual video recording, so you could record with 2 cameras, 13 at the same time. 13 megapixel rear camera with HDR video camera back in 2013, crazy. Exynos 5410 octa-core processor, 64 gigabyte SD card support, LTE, again, amazing. And thinks phones still have LTE to this day, and they had a phone back in 2013 that LTE. An IR blaster that would allow you to control like your air conditioner, your TV, things like that. 2 gigabytes of RAM, a 2600 milliamp battery, a 5 inch Super AMOLED display, so fairly, large display for the time. And then storage sizes again, 16, 32, and 64 gigabytes. The S5, I did buy this one, I remember, because I think this is the one with like the Band-Aid looking back. Came with a 16 megapixel rear camera with PDAF. Dual video recording again, 4K video recording as well. So this is the 2014, you could record in 4K video, and think that's lasted 6 years at this point to do 4K video recording. We're just finally getting into 8K. Snapdragon 801 processor, Android 4.4, micro USB 3.0. It finally got an IP rating of IP67. It's only on IP68 currently. So again, you think about some of these stats, and they go far back, and they've traveled with the phone and haven't changed that much. A front-mounted fingerprint scanner, so it was at the bottom of the phone on the little button there. 16 and 32 gigabytes of storage. It's funny that they got rid of the 64. And also you got a 5.1 inch Super AMOLED display. The S6 came out in March of 2015, had an Exynos 7420 processor, 3 gigabytes of RAM, Android 5, micro SIM, Gorilla Glass 4, and wireless charging for the first time. 5.1 inch Super AMOLED display. Storage sizes 32, 64, and now 128 gigabytes of storage. A ton of storage. It's even then, 128 is still a lot of storage. They also, in just a few months later, they came out with the Galaxy S6 Edge in August of 2015, and that had a 5.7 inch Super AMOLED display. And remember, it was curved. It had a curved edge display, 4 gigabytes of RAM, Bluetooth 4.2, did not have an SD card, unfortunately, a 3000 milliamp battery, and storage sizes of 32 and 64. The S7 launched in February 2016, had an Exynos 8890, Android 6.0, an always-on display, which still is here to this day, and that, again, it's 2016, they came out with those always-on displays. Hybrid dual SIM, so if you wanted to run two SIM cards in there at once, you could. 4 gigabytes of RAM, which matches the Pixel phones that are currently out, if I remember correctly. I think those only have 4. Maybe they have 6, actually. But even the last year's Pixels only had 4 gigabytes of RAM. And remember, this is a phone from 2016. Quick Charge 2.0, which is lasted for a very long time in there. Also, 256 gigabyte external SD card support, and storage sizes of 32 and 64. In the same year, February 2016, they released the Galaxy S7 Edge. That had a 5.5-inch Super AMOLED display. You could record in 4K 30 frames per second with the rear camera. Also 1440 by 2560 resolution on the display, so they amped up that display resolution. Aluminum frame with Gorilla Glass 4. The 512 gigabyte external SD card support, which is crazy, that's a ton of storage. 7.5 millimeter thickness, 3600 milliamp battery, and storage sizes of 32, 64, and 128. When the S8 came out, that was March of 2017, with a 5.8-inch Super AMOLED screen, and that was their biggest phone as of yet, with a iris scanner to unlock the phone and do like mobile payments with, so it would look at your eyes. Snapdragon 835, and also this was the beginning of, at least for me anyway, where the phones didn't really lag anymore or like get hot unnecessarily. So rear mounted fingerprint scanner, so the fingerprint scanner was on the back. Gorilla Glass 5, Android 7, USB 3.1. Also, they introduced Type-C charging on this, which is I love. Featured Bixby Virtual Assistant for the first time. Bluetooth 5.0 and 3D Touch on the home button only, and only came in 64 gigabytes of storage. They also released the S8 Plus, and on the S8 Plus, it came in a 6.2-inch display, which is that was now the biggest. The storage sizes were 64 and 128 gigabytes. Also had a variant with 6 gigabytes of RAM, an Exynos 8895. Obviously, they had Snapdragon versions of these phones too, so don't forget that. 529 PPI pixel density. Samsung DeX support, so you could turn your phone basically into a desktop computer. 256 gigabyte external SD card support. 3D Touch on the home button, and a 3500 milliamp battery. In February 2018, the S9 launched with dual rear cameras, 12 megapixel dual autofocus, Snapdragon 845, Android 8.0, dual aperture, Dolby Atmos surround sound, which is still here to this day and I use all the time to make your sound even better and more immersive, a 5.8-inch Super AMOLED Infinity display, and storage sizes of 64, 128, and 256, which 256 was the largest at the time. The S9 Plus launched in the same month with a 6.2-inch display and had dual 12 megapixel cameras with 2x zoom, telephoto camera lens, 6 gigabytes of RAM, Exynos 9810, screen resolution of 1440 by 2960, 3500 milliamp battery, Bluetooth 5.0, and again, storage size of 64, 128, and 256. The S10 launched, which was the latest so far, in February of 2019 with punch hole cameras. So they basically have all screen display with just a little camera on the screen, triple rear cameras on the back, Exynos 9820 processor, Android 9.0, Gorilla Glass 6 to keep it extra protective, scratch resistant, and break resistant displays. Ultra under display fingerprint scanner, so the fingerprint scanner moved to underneath the display. 8 gigabytes of RAM, 3500 milliamp battery, and a 6.1-inch Super AMOLED capacitive touchscreen, and storage sizes of 128 and 256. They also came out with an S10e, which gave dual rear cameras, 2160, actually 4K 60 frame per second video recording on the rear camera, 6 gigs of RAM, 256 gigabyte external SD card support, reverse wireless charging, so you could charge devices on the back. You could also do that in the S10, but it's kind of mixing some things up in here. Resolution of 1440 by 2960 with 128 gigabyte storage and a 5.8 inch Super AMOLED capacitive touchscreen. The S10 Plus, which is the phone I had earlier in 2019, has dual rear front cameras, triple rear cameras, 12 gigabytes of RAM, 4,000 milliamp battery, USB 3.1 with Type-C reversible connector, aluminum body frame covered with Gorilla Glass 6, 6.4 inch Super AMOLED, which I think I already said. Storage sizes of 128, 512, and 1 terabyte, which to this day is still the most storage they offer on any of their phones, and I don't think they're going to beat that even this year. It doesn't sound like they're coming out with a 1 terabyte version of the phone. Let's get into the S20 phones here. S20 5G will be a 6.2 inch QHD plus Infinity O dynamic OLED display with 12 megapixel main wide camera, 64 megapixel telephoto, and 12 megapixel ultra wide. On the back, 8K 30 frame per second video recording, 10 megapixel front camera with 4K 60 frame recording video on the front camera. Exynos 990, Android 10, One UI 2.0, 1 terabyte micro SD card support, and a 4,000 milliamp battery with storage size of 128. The S20 Plus 5G will have a 6.7 inch QHD plus Infinity O dynamic OLED display, 10 megapixel front camera with 4K 60 on that front camera. Also the same cameras you got on the other one, the previous one, 12 megapixel wide, telephoto at 64 megapixels, and an ultra wide with 12 megapixel and time of flight back camera. 8K3 video recording on the back camera, 30 times digital zoom, Exynos 990, One UI 2.0, Android 10, 1 terabyte micro SD card support, and 4,500 milliamp battery, and 128 gigabytes of storage. And lastly, the behemoth, the one I'm getting, the Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G, will launch in February 2020 with 108 megapixel main wide camera, 48 megapixel telephoto, 12 megapixel ultra wide, 8K 30 video recording on the rear camera, 100 times digital zoom. It's a crazy amount. 40 megapixel wide front camera, 4K 60 video recording on the front camera, Exynos 990, Android 10, One UI 2.0, 1 terabyte micro SD card support, 5,000 milliamp battery, 128 and 512 gigabytes of storage. The phones are getting crazier and crazier with the specs. 6.9 inch QHD Infinity O dynamic OLED display, their largest display ever on a Galaxy phone, bigger than the Note phones. So anyways, let me know what you think. What was your, what Galaxy phone 1 through 20, I should say, blows you away the most? I know obviously the 20 Ultra is going to be the best, but I don't know, which phone kind of blew you away and made you like say, wow, this is amazing? I would say for me, it was probably the S7 or S8 really blew me away at the time out of the Galaxy S line of phones. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching. See you down the road. Peace.